The human prisoner. The sky above planet Rydek was always purple. 2 suns burned high, but the lab deep under the surface stayed cold and dark. Metal walls hummed softly. Inside Cell 7, a human sat alone. His name was Daniel Cross. To the aliens, he was a beast, a dangerous creature from Earth, the last survivor of a battle between humans and the Rydekian patrol. He had not spoken a single word since his capture. He just sat there, silent, calm. Alien guards watched him from behind thick glass. They expected roars, attacks, or maybe mad howls. But Daniel only sat with his back straight, hands resting on his knees, and eyes closed. "What is he doing?" one guard asked. "Maybe planning something," another replied. "Humans are wild animals. Don't forget what happened to Unit 9. But scientist Varric didn't agree. Varric was not like the others. He studied alien species, looking for answers. He had seen monsters before. He had seen rage, war, blood. But when he looked at Daniel, he didn't see a monster. He saw something else. Curiosity. Varric stepped closer to the glass. "Open the cell," he ordered. "Sir," the guard said, shocked. "Just for 1 minute. I want to speak to it." The door slid open with a hiss. Varric walked in slowly. Daniel didn't move. Varric's 4 eyes blinked carefully. He spoke in the common tongue, a language most species understood. "You are not what I expected." Still, no answer. "You've been here 5 days. You haven't tried to escape. You haven't attacked. Why?" Daniel slowly opened his eyes. They were calm, tired, but not afraid. "I'm tired of war," he said softly. Varric's body froze. The human spoke. And not just that. He spoke with peace in his voice. "You understand me?" Varric asked. Daniel nodded once. "Yes." "Then tell me, why did your kind kill the Rydek patrol on Mornak's moon?" Daniel looked down at his hands. "We were scared. They shot first. We lost many people. I fought because I had no choice." "But you're dangerous," Varric said. "You are faster, stronger, more aggressive." Daniel gave a sad smile. "That doesn't make me a beast." Varric stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and left the cell. The door sealed shut. The guards looked at him in disbelief. "Sir," he spoke. Varric didn't answer. His mind was full of questions. Could it be that everything they knew about humans was wrong? Later that night, Varric watched the security feed. Daniel was still in his cell. He was doing something strange. He was humming. A soft sound. A human melody. The tune. Varric had never heard anything like it. The next day, Varric ran tests. He gave Daniel puzzles, lights, sound shocks, even hunger. But Daniel didn't break. He didn't growl, shout, or attack. Instead, he helped a small alien insect that wandered into his cell by mistake. He gently picked it up and put it outside the door. The lab workers stared. One whispered, "That bug has killed before." He didn't even flinch. Varric made a note in his pad. This human shows patience, empathy, intelligence. 3 days later, a mistake happened. An injured alien soldier, badly burned, was dropped into Daniel's cell by accident. A system glitch. The guards rushed to fix it. But inside the cell, they saw something unbelievable. Daniel was helping the alien. He tore part of his shirt, cleaned the wound, and tied it carefully. He gave the soldier water from his own supply. The alien, barely awake, whispered, "Why?" Daniel replied, "Because you're hurt, and I'm not your enemy." Varric stood frozen. His chest felt tight. Everything they had believed, everything they taught about humans, might be a lie. Tests and whispers. The news of what Daniel did spread fast. In just 1 day, everyone in Lab Sector 12 was whispering about the human. The beast who saved an injured alien instead of killing him. The security team tried to hide the footage. But the story slipped out. He helped the soldier, someone said near the food unit. He didn't even try to run, another replied. But most were still afraid. It's a trick, said Guard Terrell. That's how beasts hunt. They wait, pretend to be weak. Then they bite. Varric stood in the middle of it all, quiet and thoughtful. He remembered every second of what he saw. Daniel, carefully tying a bandage, gently pressing water to the burned skin, whispering soft words of comfort, even though the alien had once tried to kill him. Varric had studied hundreds of species. Some were kind, some were brutal, but never had he seen this kind of mercy from a prisoner. It shook him. Varric's experiment begins. Inside his private lab, Varric designed a special series of tests, not to hurt Daniel, but to understand him. Test 1. Puzzle simulation. Daniel was placed in a bright room. On one side was food. On the other, a small crying alien creature behind glass. The puzzle in the center controlled who would be saved. Daniel solved it fast, and chose the child, not the food. Subject shows empathy over instinct, Varric wrote. Test 2. Fear response. The walls turned red. Loud battle sounds played. Smoke filled the chamber. But Daniel didn't scream or hide. Instead, he knelt and covered his ears. Calm, focused, breathing deeply. Varric noted, no signs of madness. No panic. Control through meditation. Test 3. The mirror test. This one was different. Daniel was placed in front of a mirror. A fake alien image was placed behind him. A threat meant to trigger fear. Instead of reacting, Daniel turned around and smiled. I know you're not real, he said softly. Fear is an illusion. Varric stopped the simulation. He stared at the human on the screen. Who was this man? A forbidden visit. That night, when the lab was quiet, a young assistant named Lyra snuck into the viewing chamber. She had watched the videos. She had heard the whispers. Now she wanted to see the human with her own eyes. She stepped near the glass, heart pounding. Daniel sat calmly, eyes closed. He looked peaceful, not like the images she saw in the alien textbooks. Not like the red-eyed killer her teachers described. Why don't you fight? She asked softly. Daniel opened his eyes and looked at her. I'm tired of fighting, he said. You're supposed to be dangerous. He gave a small smile. We all are, in our own way. Do you miss Earth? She asked. He looked up at the purple sky beyond the vent screen. Every moment. Lyra didn't tell anyone about her visit, but something changed in her that day. Varric's dilemma. Varric stood in front of the Science Council the next morning. He brought data, videos, and reports. He explained how Daniel had shown signs of advanced emotional intelligence, kindness, patience, and self-control. But the council only laughed. He's playing you, said High Scientist Coral. Humans are dangerous. Their war machines destroyed our outposts on Mars. Varric replied, but that wasn't him. That was war. Look at the man, not the past. The council refused. They ordered the final phase. Terminate the subject. Whispers in the dark. Back in the lab, Lyra cried quietly. They're going to kill him, she told Varric. Varric sat silently. He watched the footage of Daniel helping the injured soldier, solving the puzzle, smiling in the mirror. A beast wouldn't do these things. A monster wouldn't choose mercy when no one was watching. That night, Varric left a message on Daniel's cell screen. Do you trust me? Daniel stared at it for a long time, then nodded once. The beast who heals. The night was cold in Lab Sector 12. The corridors, once loud with machines, now hummed softly. Security bots floated slowly through the halls. Most of the lab crew had gone to their rest pods, but two beings remained awake, Varric and Daniel. Inside Cell 7, Daniel waited. He had seen the message. Do you trust me? He had nodded. But trust was dangerous here. The escape begins. Varric moved through the dark hallway, carrying a small cube. It glowed green in his palm. One press could open every door in the testing wing for exactly 4 minutes. No alarms, no records. It was a tool meant for emergencies. Tonight, Varric was using it for something else. He reached cell 7, looked at Daniel through the glass, and whispered, "Now." The cube clicked. The door slid open. Daniel didn't run. He just stood up slowly and walked out, nodding once in thanks. "I hope I'm right about you," Varric said quietly. Daniel replied, "I hope you are too." The unexpected choice. They moved quickly through back tunnels, but halfway through, they heard it. A faint cry. Not a machine. Not a guard. A child. Varric froze. "That sound came from the medical bay," he said. "Injured refugees. That area's off limits." Daniel didn't wait. He turned and ran toward the voice. "Wait," Varric hissed. But Daniel had already entered the side corridor. Inside the bay, a small alien child lay in a cold pod. Her skin was bruised, her breathing weak. A robotic nurse lay broken beside her. Varric reached him. "We don't have time." Daniel looked down at the girl. "Then leave." "I can't." He tore cloth from his sleeve, gently cleaned the girl's wound, and adjusted the airflow pipe in her mask. His movements were careful, like someone used to helping others, not someone raised in war. Varric stared. He didn't move, because in that moment, he realized something. Daniel wasn't just different. He was good. The chase. Alarms didn't go off, but someone noticed the door logs had been touched. A patrol squad was sent to check. Daniel and Varric heard the boots echoing. "Go," Varric said, grabbing Daniel's arm. "They're coming." They escaped through the recycling vents, sliding through narrow metal shafts. Daniel coughed, scratched, and winced as sharp edges cut his hands. But he never stopped. When they dropped into the outer forest, purple trees surrounded them. Strange glowing insects floated in the dark. Above, the twin moons of Rydek glowed blue. They were free. But for how long? In the forest, Varric and Daniel built a fire under a rocky ledge. It was small, just enough to keep warm. Daniel sat with a soft smile. "I haven't seen a sky like this in a long time." Varric sat beside him, tired. "Why did you stop for the child?" Daniel looked into the fire. "Because no one stopped for mine." Varric blinked. "You have children." "I did. Once. Before the war." His voice cracked, but he didn't cry. "My daughter died waiting for help that never came. I promised myself, if I ever saw someone in pain again, I wouldn't walk away." The firelight flickered on his face. Varric felt something in his chest, something he hadn't felt since he was a child. Guilt. Maybe the real beasts were not on Earth. Maybe they were here, in these halls, in these labs, behind glass screens and cold eyes. The hidden witness. Far above, in a hidden watchtower, a young alien soldier named Sirach watched the forest. He had orders to report anything strange. But when he saw the footage of Daniel helping the girl, something stopped him. He had seen monsters before, but this wasn't one. This human, he saved her, Sirach whispered to himself. Why would a beast do that? He didn't send the alert. Instead, he downloaded the footage and saved it to a secret chip. A new whisper begins. In the next sector, Lyra, the lab assistant, received a message on her private pad. No name, just a file. She played it. It showed Daniel holding the alien child, helping her breathe. She covered her mouth in shock. "He's not a beast," she whispered. She copied the file, sent it to someone else, then another, and another. By sunrise, the whisper had turned into a storm, ending with a turning point. In a hidden cave beneath the Rydek Mountains, Daniel slept, his hands still dirty from the vents, his clothes torn from the chase, but his breathing was calm. He didn't know that across the galaxy, something had changed. He didn't know that for the first time, aliens were questioning the story they were told. He didn't know that a movement had begun, one that would change everything. He only knew one thing. He was no longer just surviving. He was healing. Escape protocol. The purple sun was rising over the mountain ridge. Soft light broke through the alien forest, casting long shadows on the ground. The air smelled like ash and cold fruit. Hidden under a rocky ledge, Daniel stirred from sleep. His body ached, but his mind was sharp. He wasn't in a prison cell anymore, but he still wasn't free. Varric's doubt. Varric sat nearby, leaning against a tree root. He hadn't slept all night. His thoughts ran in circles. What had he done? He broke laws, betrayed the Science Council, helped an enemy escape. But was Daniel really the enemy? Varric remembered Daniel's hands, gently placing a bandage on a wounded child, lifting her tiny head, holding her until she could breathe. No alien soldier he had ever known did that. No council member. No war leader. Just this human. A beast. He looked at Daniel, who was now boiling water with hot stones. His movements were calm, focused, like a man used to surviving, yet never losing his purpose. I studied 1,000 species, Varric finally said, but none confuse me like you. Daniel smiled softly. Maybe confusion is the start of understanding. A shared past. Later, as the fire crackled, Daniel began to talk, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. You know, back on Earth, he said, I was a teacher. I taught young cadets how to fly. Varric turned. You weren't a soldier. I became one, but not by choice. He paused. The war came to my city. One moment I was reading bedtime stories to my daughter. The next, the sky was burning. Varric's fingers tightened around his tablet. I lost her in the first blast, Daniel said, his voice low. She was 6. Loved stars. Always wanted to see Saturn's rings. There was silence for a long time. Then Varric said something he had never said before. I'm sorry. Daniel nodded. I'm not here for revenge. I just don't want more children to grow up hating what they don't understand. Discovery in the forest. As they walked deeper into the woods, they found something strange. A crashed alien scout drone, half buried in the mud. Still blinking. Still active. Daniel crouched beside it. If we fix this, we can send a signal. Varric frowned. That's dangerous. Or useful. They worked together. Daniel used wire from his jacket. Varric rewired the drone's core. It took them hours, but finally, a screen lit up. Instead of sending a call for help, Daniel uploaded a recording. It showed the moment he helped the injured child. It showed his hands, his care, his humanity. Then he looked into the lens and spoke. To anyone watching this, I'm not a monster. I'm not your enemy. I'm just a man who lost everything. If you still believe in truth, look at this and decide for yourself. They launched the drone into the sky. It disappeared over the trees like a silver bird. The first break in the wall. That drone made it far, beyond forest lines, over city domes, into the edge of the outer ring, where a small rebel unit called the Blue Signal was listening. Among them was Sarek, the young alien soldier who had first seen Daniel in the forest. He watched the message in silence. Then he turned to his team and said, we need to protect him. Back at the lab, trouble grows. Inside Lab Sector 12, Lyra was questioned by security. Have you seen Scientist Varric? The guard asked. No, she lied, hiding her pad behind her back. She had seen the drone message too, and it broke her. The more she watched Daniel, the more she realized she had been taught to hate a species she didn't even know. When the guards left, she sent a copy of the message to a friend in the Galactic News Network. The truth was starting to spread, like fire under dry leaves. Hunted. Varric and Daniel didn't know it yet, but they had become targets. The Science Council had declared Varric a traitor. The Council feared that if Daniel's actions were seen by more citizens, public support might turn. And if people started asking questions, The war would no longer have a reason. Chase through the ruins. 3 days later, scouts found their hiding place. Daniel and Varric ran through old ruins, broken remains of alien temples from a forgotten civilization. The ground was cracked, the air full of dust. Hoverbikes chased them. Laser shots fired. Daniel didn't shoot back. Instead, he used smoke bombs and debris to slow them. "We have to keep moving," Varric shouted. Daniel stopped. "No," he said. "We hide. I have an idea." The message of the stars. They crawled into a hidden observatory dome, ancient but still working. Daniel linked the old antenna with his wristband and activated a deep space signal. The stars above began to move on the ceiling, a beautiful dance of light and color. Then Daniel stood in the center and recorded one last message. "They say humans are beasts, but I know the truth. We bleed, we cry, we hope, we love. If that makes me a beast, then I accept it. But ask yourself, what kind of beast heals his enemy?" Ending with suspense. Outside the dome, shadows moved. Troops surrounded the area. A voice echoed from a speaker. "Varric of Rydic, Daniel of Earth, come out now or face destruction." Inside, the last message finished uploading. Varric turned to Daniel. "What now?" Daniel looked at the stars. "Now, we make them listen." The alien rebellion. The video had spread. Not by ships, not through official channels. It moved like a secret, from lab workers to cleaners, from young students to off-duty guards, from silent rebels to old veterans who still remembered peace. The message from the human named Daniel was everywhere. "If that makes me a beast, then I accept it. But ask yourself, what kind of beast heals his enemy?" Inside the cracks. In the dark halls of Rydic City, a group of young alien cadets gathered in a maintenance tunnel. The leader was Sarek, the soldier who had once watched Daniel from the tower. Sarek held a small projector. He played Daniel's message again. None of them spoke. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others looked at the floor. Finally, Sarek said, "They told us humans were monsters. They told us they burned planets for fun." A quiet voice said, "He saved that child. He could have run. He could have escaped alone." "He didn't," Sarek replied. "He stayed. He chose mercy." The others looked at each other. One by one, they nodded. Varric's doubt grows. Back inside the ancient observatory dome, Daniel and Varric listened as static buzzed through the antenna. They were trying to locate the origin of the viral signal. "I don't understand," Varric said. "Your message, it's spreading faster than any data I've seen. People are watching it even in the outer colonies." Daniel gave a small smile. "People are tired of war. They just needed a reason to question it." Varric sighed. "They're going to find us soon." Daniel stood up. "Then we better be ready." In the shadows of power, inside the grand hall of the Science Council, panic was rising. Screens showed alien citizens gathering in small groups. Some carried signs. Others wore images of Daniel's face across their clothing. Whispers were turning into questions. A high-ranking leader slammed his fist. "He is poisoning the minds of our people." Another said, "He's one man. How can one man cause so much trouble?" A third stood slowly and said, "Maybe that's what scares us most." The message that changed everything. On a farming moon called Kethra, an old Ridikian war veteran named Harnell watched Daniel's message late at night. He had once fought in the Great Expansion Wars, lost both his sons to battle. His heart had grown cold. But when he saw Daniel, bandaging an alien child, crying under the stars, something cracked. Harnell replayed the message 3 times. Then he walked outside and painted something on the side of his barn. A symbol, a broken chain. The rebel code, blue light rising. In a hidden canyon, Sarek's group met with other rebels. Each one brought data chips, old weapons, stolen supplies. At the center of it all was a new emblem, a glowing blue light on a black flag. "The blue signal is rising," Sarek said. "Not to fight, but to protect, to speak truth, to give peace a voice." "And what about the human?" someone asked. Sarek replied, "We're going to get him to the Galactic Council." Betrayal in the shadows. But not everyone was ready for change. In the observatory dome, Varric picked up a signal, a tracking pulse. It had been planted inside the drone they used days ago. "We've been found," Varric whispered. A blast shook the wall. Guards were coming. Daniel looked at Varric. "Go. Now." But Varric hesitated. "I won't leave you." Daniel grabbed his arm. "You believed in me. That means you believe in peace. You have to survive." But just as the guards closed in, a flash of blue light blinded them. Rebel extraction. Sarek and his rebels flew in on modified hover pods, firing smoke grenades and stun charges. The observatory walls cracked as guards were pushed back. Sarek landed beside Daniel. "You're coming with us." Varric stared in disbelief. "You planned this." Daniel gave a tired smile. "I had hope." They escaped under heavy fire, vanishing into the clouds above. The seeds of change. Across the galaxy, Daniel's name was spreading. Not as a beast, not as a killer, but as a bridge. Between war and peace, between fear and understanding, between species who had never dared to talk, ending with power. Inside a hidden rebel base, Sarek turned to Daniel. "You're not a soldier anymore. You're a symbol now." Daniel looked down at his hands, the same hands that had once held a gun, then a child, and now a future. "I'm just a man," he said quietly. Varric stepped beside him. "Yes, and that's why you're changing everything." Trial of the Beast. The chambers of the Galactic Council had never been so full. For the first time in over a century, all council seats were filled. Aliens from more than 30 star systems sat in silence, waiting for the trial to begin. Their faces showed no emotion. Their eyes, glowing and strange, stared forward like statues. The case was simple on paper. A human named Daniel Cross, escaped prisoner, accused of war crimes and helped by a traitor scientist named Varric of Rydic. But everyone in the room knew this was no simple trial. This was a turning point in history. Arrival of the prisoner. The heavy doors opened. Guards stepped forward. Behind them walked Daniel. He wore no chains. His clothes were torn but clean. His face calm. He didn't look like a killer. He didn't look like a monster. He looked human. As he entered, murmurs filled the chamber. "That's him. The one from the message. The healer." Daniel stopped at the center of the circular hall. A spotlight shone down from above. In front of him stood the high chair, a tall platform where the elder voice, the oldest council member, would deliver the final judgment. The elder voice was a silent, ancient being made of glass and light. No one had seen it speak in decades. But today, it watched closely. The prosecutor speaks. The lead council prosecutor, a sharp-tongued alien named Magrin, stepped forward. She pointed at Daniel. "This creature brought war," she said coldly. "His kind destroyed moons, burned colonies, and attacked our patrols. Your Honor, we present 54 hours of battle footage and 92 witness logs. Do not be fooled by his calm look. He is not here for peace. He is here to destroy us from the inside." Many nodded in agreement. Others stayed silent. The defense rises. Then, from the side chamber, Varric stepped forward. He looked tired, worn, but strong. "I was once like you," he began. "I believe humans were wild, that they had no heart, that they were animals in skin." He turned toward Daniel. "Then I saw this man give water to an enemy. I saw him stay behind to save a child not of his species. I saw him choose mercy again and again, even when it would have been easier to choose violence." He turned back to the council. You ask me if he's a beast. No, I've seen beasts. I've worked for them. And none of them looked like him. Daniel's turn. The elder voice sent a signal. Daniel was allowed to speak. He stepped forward slowly and looked at all of them, thousands of eyes watching. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just told the truth. I came from war, Daniel said softly. I lost everything. My wife, my daughter, my home. I was angry. I hated. I wanted revenge. But when I was captured, something changed. He looked up. I saw your fear. I saw how you believed my kind were monsters. And I realized that's how we saw you too. There was silence in the room. We were both wrong, he continued. Not all of you are cruel. Not all of us are kind. But we all feel. We all bleed. We all love. He pulled a small object from his pocket. A music chip, a simple recording. He held it up. This is the last thing my daughter gave me before she died. It's a song. A lullaby. She wanted to be friends with alien children. Daniel placed the chip on the floor and pressed play. The song. Soft music filled the air. It was simple, childlike, beautiful. A melody without words, but full of emotion. Even the elder voice tilted its head. A young alien in the gallery began to cry. A guard dropped his weapon. For one long minute, no one spoke. No one breathed. Just the music. The vote. The council gathered to vote. Each member cast a glowing stone into a bowl. Red for guilty, blue for free. The count was close. Too close. Finally, the elder voice stood. Its body of light shimmered. Its voice echoed like thunder and wind. We fi deed he beast. The chamber held its breath. But digid beast, she jeos to hel. It raised a hand. One man cannot change a war, but one truth can change a galaxy. The elder voice placed a blue stone into the bowl. The room exploded in noise. Some shouted. Some cheered. Others stood frozen. Daniel had been set free. Not everyone agreed. Outside the chambers, chaos stirred. A small group of extremists threw black flags on the ground. The council is weak. They shouted. The human lied. But inside, something had already shifted. Hope had entered the galaxy. And it was wearing human skin, ending with strength. Daniel stood on the platform, beside Varric and Sirach, as reporters and rebel leaders gathered. You're not a beast, one alien said. Daniel shook his head. No, he replied. I'm just human. He turned to the stars. And for the first time, in a long time, he felt like he belonged there. One man changed everything. The galaxy did not change overnight. It never does. But something had begun, like the slow melting of ice after a long winter. A message had been heard. A lie had been broken. And one man, one human, was now at the center of it all. His name was Daniel Cross. The aftermath. After the trial, Daniel was given temporary protection by the Galactic Council. He stayed in a peaceful settlement on the moon Elan 4, surrounded by trees that glowed at night and air that smelled like sweet dust. For the first time in years, he didn't hear alarms. He didn't see walls. He didn't feel like a prisoner. But he also didn't feel finished. He spent his days in silence, walking through the fields, speaking to young alien students who came to meet him. They asked simple questions. Do humans dream? What does rain feel like? Is it true your daughter sang to the stars? Daniel always smiled. Yes. She believed stars listen, even when people don't. Varric's mission. Varric had returned to Rydic City, no longer as a scientist, but as a speaker of truth. He traveled to universities, labs, and war rooms. His words were simple. I met the beast, and he taught me how to feel again. At first, many rejected him, but others listened. The ones who had lost family. The ones who were tired of silence. the ones who had seen the video of Daniel holding the alien child. Change was slow, but it had begun. Across the stars, on farming moons, miners played Daniel's message through old speakers. In star stations, young cadets wrote his quotes on their helmets, and in the underground tunnels of the Blue Signal Rebellion, his image hung from the walls like a legend, an ordinary man who did something extraordinary. The return invitation. One day, a message came. From Earth. Signed by the United Human Council. Daniel had been declared missing in action for 5 years. They believed he was dead, but now, they wanted him home. The message ended with one sentence. If you're still alive, we owe you everything. The journey home. Daniel stood at the edge of the landing pad on Elan 4. The transport ship hummed behind him, ready to return to Earth. But he wasn't alone. Beside him stood Varric, Lyra, and Serac. Friends. Family, even. You don't have to go, Varric said. Daniel looked at the stars. No. But I need to. Serac stepped forward. You gave us something we can't repay. Daniel turned. Then pass it on. He handed Serac a small item, a carved stone with the symbol of peace. Then he smiled one last time and stepped aboard. Earth. The ship landed in the ruins of what was once New Vancouver, a city crushed during the war. But now, rebuilding had begun. Children ran between repaired streets. Flags of peace flew beside flags of nations. As Daniel stepped off the ship, the crowd was silent. No cheers, no clapping, just quiet awe. A little girl walked forward and placed a flower in his hand. You're the man from the stars, she whispered. Daniel knelt. No, I'm the man who finally came home. Legacy begins. Months passed. Daniel didn't become a politician. He didn't write a book. Instead, he built a school. Not just for humans, but for all species. He called it the Unity Center. It had no weapons, no uniforms, just voices, questions, and stories. Varric visited once and found Daniel reading the storybook to children. Half alien, half human, sitting under the shade of a tree. You never stop teaching, Varric said. Daniel smiled, because I finally have something worth teaching. The final message. Years later, an old transmission was found in the council archives, a private message Daniel had sent just before the trial began. It was never aired. Until now. If I don't survive, remember this. I wasn't special. I wasn't brave. I was just a man who made a choice. To heal instead of hurt. To listen instead of shout. If that makes me different, then maybe we all need to be a little more different. Ending with hope. In the sky above the Unity Center, hundreds of lights danced across the stars. Ships of many species, many worlds, all following the same course. Not toward war, but toward understanding. And at the heart of it all was the story of a man once feared, once caged, now remembered as the one who changed everything.